I'm Kevin Maguire, and tonight on Pole Position, we're finding out what it is really like on doorsteps with a Labour rookie. And is it in the bag? Is that complacency? Are those polls trouble for Labour? And the Farage factor. How much of a threat is Reform UK? Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Another day when betting scandals have dominated the headlines. A Labour idiot joining the Tories. Well, his feet didn't touch the ground. Keir Starmer kicked him out as a candidate faster than you could say 10-1. Very different to Rishi Sunak, who took nearly a fortnight to act against those who'd been found in the Tory ranks betting on the date of the election. Anyway, away from that, I'm delighted our special guest tonight is Mark Ferguson, trade unionist, Labour candidate in Gateshead and Gateshead Central and Wickham. A rookie candidate, Mark. You're a local lad standing for the first time.
I am, yeah. So I'm a first-time candidate with all that comes with that. But you know, it's a great experience to be able to knock on doors and speak to people who you grew up with, have the chance to represent your friends and your family. It's a fantastic experience, really.
Go on, and I'm Mr. Miggins. You've knocked on my door. I'm having my dinner. You've interrupted it. I've come to the door. I've opened it, and you're standing there, presumably with the rosette on.
Absolutely.
Give us your pitch.
Well, look, the main thing at the minute is not to bother people when they're watching the football. But look, my pitch would be: our region, this community, has been ignored and let down for too long. When Westminster gets a cough, it's Gateshead and places like this that get a cold. We need to be investing properly in the businesses of the future that will provide proper long-term jobs for our community. I'm from here. It's my home. I'm completely committed to our constituency, and I'll fight like hell every single day for Gateshead, for my family, for my friends, and the people I've spent my whole life around. Because at the end of the day, being an MP, I think quite often people just feel like MPs or parliamentary candidates or any sort of politician, we just turn up when we want the vote. But people in Gateshead need somebody who's going to fight for them every single second of every single day, who understands what they're going through. And I think that's me.
How do you find it, actually, asking people for their votes? I mean, you're very recognisable. You're bearded, you're sitting down, but you're a tall lad.
Yeah, my wife calls this face furniture.
It looks all right. You're lucky. It's I've got to pay a fortune for silver tints. But yeah, do you find most people receptive? When you stop them?
I do, yeah. I mean, the voice helps. I think that people understand that I'm from around here. It doesn't take them too long to work that out. And I've spent a lot of time knocking on doors for the Labour Party over the years, all over the country, including the home around here. But it is a bit easier to do it for yourself because you don't have to think, oh, I wonder what the candidate thinks, because you just say what you think, and you can have conversations, to be honest with people, and you can say, look, I understand that there might be things that we might disagree on, but I think there probably are a lot of things that we do agree on. But yeah, it is very strange at first to knock on someone's door and say, hello, I'm your Labour candidate and I'd like you to vote for me. But you get used to it. And if you believe genuinely that you can make a difference to your community, it's worth getting over that strangeness. And you have some good conversations with people as well. You learn a lot from people. There are always things. There are streets that I've walked down my whole life, but you speak to people in those areas and you have conversations with people and you learn even more about the community than you ever would just by living here. So it really does make a difference. It's very important. I think sometimes people find it hard to get over that barrier of knocking on someone's door, of introducing yourself to someone you don't know, but it's incredibly important. Fundamentally, it's about trust. And I think that's the big thing that's been lost in politics, is that the thing that I get that makes me saddest is not when someone says they're voting for someone else. I don't like that. But, people have their own opinions. It's when people say they feel like it's not going to make any difference if they vote. And it's that lack of trust that's going to be really important whatever the outcome of the election, whoever forms the government, to try and restore that trust in politics, because the likes of Boris Johnson and Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak have undermined that trust so much in recent years.
It's the case, isn't it, that you can only restore that trust if you are elected and then you're part of a government that delivers what it promised. You've actually, it's deeds, not words. It's action, not words. You've got to.
Exactly. There's things I've got on my. I mean, Labour's got pledges. It's got everything that's in this manifesto. But I've also got my own 5 pledges because I wanted to have things that are authentic to Gateshead. Some of them I can do if there's not a Labour government. Some of them I can only really do if there is Labour government. So regardless of who wins the election across the country, if I'm elected here, I am going to work with businesses and trade unions to bring skilled, well-paid jobs to Gateshead and Wickham. I am going to hold regular advice surgeries across the constituency so everyone's got access to me. But I can't deliver more neighbourhood police. I can't deliver Labour's New Deal for working people. And I can't get waiting lists down if Rishi Sunak's still sat in Downing Street.
Yeah, and is it you're a trade unionist, Mark? Work for Unison, senior position. Is that New Deal, which I've said many times, I still think it's the shining jewel in Labour's crown, that making work pay better, making it more secure, more rewarding, and of course making Britain a more productive, prosperous country. In your area, Gateshead Central and Wickham, I know it, and people are lovely, and there's some people who've done well, and there's lovely housing, and then you've got urban deprivation, haven't you? The post-industrial style. Is it? You've got to tackle that. Do you think that is the plan, the crucial part, the mortar to get the area? Get people a fairer crack of the whip.
Exactly. Do you know what that sense of fair crack of the whip? I think that's what a lot of people round here, a lot of my friends feel like they haven't had a fair crack of the whip over the last 15 years. A lot of people feel like they've played by the rules and they've worked hard and they've done what they're meant to do, and yet they're still struggling. So the New Deal, look, I won't go into the whole thing. I've spent 4 years working on it with a lot of other trade unionists, with Angela Rayner, with Keir Starmer, with people across the Labour Party, and I'm incredibly proud of it. It's probably professionally the thing that I'm most proud of in my life. But just to give you some of the top things that it would deliver. So it's a real living wage. So it's a living wage that's based on the actual cost of living. So a wage that rises based on how much it actually costs to live in this country. It's no longer going to be an absolute floor of what someone could survive on. It's going to be what someone could live on. It's about strengthening sick pay and making sure that everybody can get it. It's about having proper enforcement of rights at work and also making sure that we have full rights from day one. It's not something that people are going to have to wait for. If you've got a job, you deserve to have rights at work. You deserve to be free from, for example, your employer trying to dismiss you unfairly. We're going to ban 0 hours contracts. We're going to get rid of fire and rehire. I really could talk about this all day. I'm incredibly passionate about it. But fundamentally, it's about giving people a fair shake and a fair go. And it is about making work pay, putting more money in people's pockets. And that has a massive impact in communities like mine. Because if people who aren't earning a lot of money earn a bit more money, they don't go and buy stocks and shares. They don't go on a cruise around the world. What they do is they spend more money in their local shops. They help revitalise their local high street. They spend more money on their kids. They spend more money on their community. And all of that has a massive multiplying effect in terms of the impact it has on our community. So I'm desperate to get more money into Gateshead Central and Wickham, but I'm particularly keen to get it into the pockets of people who live here so they can spend it on their own community and things that matter to them.
Do you get many people in Gateshead Central and Wickham saying, I think it's wrong that Labour's going to put VAT on private school fees? Because there seems to be a rather vocal lobby at the top of some newspapers and the broadcast media, people who have their kids in private schools, keep making this an issue, which I don't find exists around the country when I speak to people.
93% of kids go to state schools, 7% go to private schools. So my wife's a teacher, my father-in-law was a teacher, my granddad was a teacher. I think it's become harder to be a teacher in this country, or a teaching assistant, or work in schools full stop. And I also think kids are seeing the impact of that. There are some schools where, teachers and teaching assistants are having to go and buy their own pens and paper because schools don't have the resources. And fundamentally, what I'm hearing here is that people want more money spent on state schools. And if that means that private schools have got to pay VAT, then so be it. Like, we need to find the money. There isn't a lot of money going around at the minute. We need to spend more money on the 93% of kids who are in state schools. I remember I went to primary school in Gateshead during a Tory government, and I remember there being buckets on the floor to collect rainwater. By the time I got to secondary school, we were moving towards having a Labour government. I remember a vast amount of investment in my education, more teachers, better resources at school. I felt like people cared about my education. I felt like I was being invested in, and I've done very well out of that. The three things that have got me pretty much everything in my life are my friends, the Labour Party, and education. And at the minute, education isn't being invested in. Of course, there's always more that could be done. But what's being promised, again, in this is a proper down payment on our kids' education. And I think that's going to have a massive impact. And no, funnily enough, in Gateshead Central and Wickham, I've not had a lot of people say to me, I've had some, but I haven't had a lot of people. Far more people are interested in hearing about free universal breakfast clubs, hearing about after-school clubs, hearing about an investment in childcare, so the parents don't have to decide between whether they can go to work and whether or not the kids get looked after, or whether or not they can afford for their kids to have breakfast in the morning. And that's really fundamental stuff. And it is painful when you spend time at places like our local food bank or in some of our local community groups, like the way that people have really stepped up in our community to fill a gap where Westminster's failed. And look, it's not going to be possible to turn everything around overnight. And I get that that's going to put some people off. But I've always believed that false promises are the worst kind of promises at all. Your Nigel Farages of this world, and I believe your Rishi Sunaks, can make whatever promises they like, but if they can't fulfill them, they're just damaging trust in politics again. And whether that's on education or anything else, I'm not willing to engage in this sort of race to the bottom on false promises. I want to get trust back into politics in my community and across the country.
Mark, I'll come on to Farage in a moment, but there's another poll. This one's for the Daily Mirror by Find Out More on Electoral Calculus. It's another mega poll. Just out over an hour ago, and it finds Labour on 450 seats with a 250 majority. The Liberal Democrats in second place, become the official opposition on 71, and the Conservatives on 60, with 20 cabinet ministers, including Rishi Sunak in Richmond and Northallerton, losing their seats. Now, one, do you believe polls like that? And two, are they good or bad for Labour in the sense, could they make people think it's in the bag, I'm not going to bother vote, results a foregone conclusion, and a complacency kicks in?
I mean, I don't believe it for a minute. It feels very, very positive where I am. People are being very supportive of Labour and of change, but those sort of numbers just don't ring true to me. I mean, look, I've spent most of my adult life trying to get rid of the Conservative Party from government. But I'm always aware that you knock on doors all over the country and people say to you, oh, I'm voting Labour, maybe say occasionally they're voting for another party, or they say they're not voting at all. And then lo and behold, the Tories still win general elections. And I feel like that's exactly what's happening here. I'm not surprised people are shy to say that they're Conservative voters. It must be very difficult to admit, even to your close friends and family, that you will still willing to support this shower after everything they've said and everything they've done. But there are millions of people in this country still voting Conservative. And I still believe there'll be a lot more Conservative MPs than that elected. And the last thing I want, look, the most frustrating conversations I ever have, if I'm honest, are the people who say that it doesn't make a difference, who are apathetic, because politics does matter and it does change your life. And if you don't do politics, politics does you. But the second most troubling are the people who say, oh, you know, you're definitely going to win here. I might vote Green. I might vote Lib Dem. I might vote Reform. But then you say to them, do you want the Conservative Party to form the next government? And they say, absolutely not. They're like, oh, I want you to be elected here. I want you and the Labour Party to be forming the next government. It's like, well, if everybody thinks like you, and I do worry that this sense of complacency, oh, I can lend my vote to somebody else. If you want a Labour government, if you want rid of the Conservative Party in government, then vote Labour. It is the only way to get that. The alternative is to play roulette. Probably should be using gambling metaphors this week, but to play roulette with the future of the country, because I just don't know how I'd get up out of bed in the morning, how any of us would get up out of bed in the morning if this lot are still somehow in power in 10 days' time. So I'm not believing any of the polls. I'm not taking any risks. I'm wearing out my shoe leather. I'm knocking on doors, and I'm not taking a single vote for granted here or anywhere else.
You mentioned Farage, and you had a go at him there, for false promises. It's unusual that, Mark, because a lot of your colleagues, when I speak to or listen to them, don't mention them at all, because that splitting the right-wing vote between Reform and the Conservative Party is advantageous in this contest for Labour. Are you worried in the longer term about the impact of Farage and his what he preaches, which is there's a lot of bigotry in it? He's inciting a lot of hate and racism. Do you worry about the impact of that on our politics in our country?
I think the main concern I have with Farage, look, he clearly taps into something that a lot of people feel. And look, there are legitimate concerns about immigration and its impact on some communities. But fundamentally, what Nigel Farage likes to do is he likes to come along with his easy-sounding solutions and say that only he can deliver them. Nigel Farage is now, Nigel Farage has now been on the political scene for the best part of 20 years. And he comes along with his false promises, and he tries to whip people up, and then he changes on to the next thing and on to the next thing. The reality is Nigel Farage has never run anything of note, certainly not politically. What Nigel Farage is offering the country would not work, does not work, and it's nonsense for anyone to pretend otherwise. His manifesto, his contract is not something that is a viable plan for the future of the country, and it's ridiculous to pretend otherwise. But what he taps into, I think, is a sense of that nothing can change in this country. So the best way for the Labour Party to deal with that, what I'm going to be focused on, is delivering real, meaningful change and keeping our promises. And I'll tell you what, the promises I make are promises that can be kept. I don't think Nigel Farage can say the same.
Thank you, Mark. That's Mark Ferguson, trade unionist and Labour candidate in Glasgow Central and Wickham in this general election in the northeast of England. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with an NHS and junior doctors strike special. Same place, same time. Thank you.